Here's the question you might be thinking. How in the world do I get my volunteers to show up to a weekly meeting? Well, if you think about it from a volunteer perspective, the question they're probably thinking is, why should I show up? What's the difference between me showing up and me not showing up? As a church volunteer, leader, server, whatever language your church uses, I've been on my share of teams. I've been on a tech team, I've been on a broadcast team, I've been on a welcome team, I've been on a student ministry team, and I've been on a kids ministry team. And not every team does a weekly touch point meeting, but the ones that do have taught me quite a bit. And so if you're wondering what your volunteers are thinking, here's a perspective of a volunteer that has served in several ministries and what they're thinking about your weekly meetings. I can totally see it from a church leader's perspective. I can totally see why you want them to show up. So volunteers, so they can pray, so they can get the information that they need to know about the event, so they can actually be on time for the event. If you have a meeting beforehand, then they kind of have to be there earlier. I totally get it. But as you're planning your meetings, as you're trying to think about how to make them effective, or if you should even be doing a weekly meeting, here's 10 things as a volunteer that I'm thinking about when you're talking about a weekly meeting. And number 7 is one that I really wish every team doing a weekly meeting would implement. In quick context, this is about weekly volunteer meetings, not about, your big annual bash or this meeting or that meeting. While I think some of the tips are helpful, I'm specifically talking about weekly volunteer meetings. And to start it off, if you don't do volunteer meetings every week, great. I'm not saying you should, but if you choose to do them every week, here's what your volunteers are thinking, starting with number 1. I kind of thought about skipping this one because pretty much every list about effective meetings or even church volunteer meetings will probably mention this one. And that's very clearly starting with the why, or starting with vision. Or not even starting with it, but just mentioning the big picture. Because as a volunteer, it can be really helpful to be reminded what in the world you're doing every week and how it connects to the big picture of the church. If you go straight into a small group overview and questions, it's helpful to remember there's a focus, that there's a story of the mission and action, that here's a quick devo on why we're about to pray for all the kids before we actually pray for the kids. So even reminding your team why in the world you're meeting in the first place, why it's good to meet and prep and be equipped for ministry can be helpful. So just give some big picture perspective. Then, number 2, as you're giving big picture perspective, don't just respect teammates' times. That's a big one that's gonna be on every list about effective meetings. Don't just respect our time, start on time. This is one of my big pet peeves as a type A person. Just start on time. I totally get it. I totally get there's the tension of there's no one in the room, so you kind of need to start a little bit later. And then people are just gonna show up later each time, but you can't start earlier because they aren't there in the first place. If you start at 6, then start at 6 and make it so valuable and so worth it to be there as a volunteer that they start showing up on time. If it truly is worth a volunteer's time, they'll be there on time and they'll miss it. And they'll be like, what just happened? What did I miss? I'm gonna be here on time next time. It's a pattern, it's a trend. And if you don't start on time one week, then you've just trained all your volunteers to show up a little bit later next week. So just start on time. If you take it seriously, your volunteers will hopefully take it seriously as well. And so how do you add it value? How do you make it so good that volunteers are talking about it to other volunteers and saying, hey, you gotta be here on time. This is what you missed. How do you do that? Well, you just add value. I know that's a very quick phrase, just 2 words, but truly, I think if you make a meeting really impactful and you do it every week and you add value every week, volunteers will be there. So start by just asking, why are you having the meeting in the first place? Because if you don't need to have the meeting in the first place, then don't have a weekly volunteer meeting. But if you actually are going to do it and take it seriously, then add value. That's the why volunteers are going to be there, because they see it's valuable. In filmmaking, there's this thing called the promise of the premise. If you have a movie about aliens invading the world, and within the first hour 30 minutes, there's no aliens invading the world, then you're going to be disappointed. And so as a volunteer, if you show up to a meeting that you've told you need to be there for and you need to be there on time for, and you show up there and you're on time and nothing happens at the meeting, and all you hear is please be here and please tell other people to be here and please be on time, that's not a lot of incentive to show up to the next meeting, because you're not fulfilling the promise of the premise. If you want volunteers to be at meetings, give them something worth being there for. Add value. Give a genuinely prepared devotional that makes them think. Show a TED Talk about culture stats, or how to be creative, or how to talk with people and effectively do this. Give updates. Teach your volunteers something new and innovative. Involve them. Just take it seriously and do something in the meeting other than just talk about nothingness or bemoan about people not being there on time and this and that. Just actually have something happen in the meeting. And a good rule of thumb is if your leaders and volunteers and servers, whatever you call them, are talking about what you just talked about in the meeting or about what the meeting was about or what happened in the meeting, then you're probably on the right track. And if you're curious about how to be remarkable, well, number 4 is involve people. Let's say you're doing a Devo to kickstart the meeting, and just a quick old 2-minute Devo every week. How about you get somebody from your team to do the Devo, assign it, divvy it out, and the odds of that person being there on time who's actually leading the Devo are pretty high. And not just doing it so they can be there on time, but actually getting people involved. Have them pray, have them give their perspective, have them lead a game or be involved, or whatever your meeting looks like. Have people involved, have your volunteers involved, so it's not just you talking the whole time. Number 5, if you don't pray in meetings, you probably should. If you only pray at the end of the meetings, you should probably add prayer more to the agenda if it's important. And if you do already have a time for guided prayer, then model what it looks like to pray really well. As a volunteer, so many times in the meeting with, hey, all right, y'all pray for the students, or pray for the kids, or pray for, the service that's about to happen. And it's great to pray for it, but guide it a little more. If you just throw a bunch of guys together, a couple guys in college, some older guys, some middle-aged guys, and they're at a table and they're supposed to be praying, the odds of them actually praying are kind of low. They'll talk a little bit. One guy will say, hey, we should pray about this. Then they'll fellowship a little bit. And one guy's wanting to fellowship a little more. And one guy's like, hey, we should pray. And one guy's wanting to pray, but is kind of shy. And then eventually, that one person prays and then they just kind of sit there or talk about whatever. And they want to pray. They really do. Your volunteers want to pray, but sometimes you just got to model it and show the way and have some passion for it, and maybe your volunteers will catch the goal and catch the vision. If you take it seriously and you champion it as the leader, then your volunteers probably will as well. So if prayer is on the agenda, as it probably should be, then take it seriously and find a way to make it really important and essential to that meeting. Consistency and knowing what to expect is great. Variety is also great. So for the 2 types of leaders, 1, if you never have a plan, then create some consistency and then change it up about once a month. So if you're just showing up and nothing's ever the same and it's just kind of hodgepodge, then actually create a plan. But if you have a plan all the time and follow the exact same formula every single time, then your volunteers are probably getting a little burned out. So if you don't have a plan, create a plan. Variety is the spice of life, it's not the sustenance of life. If you don't have a plan, or if you do have a plan, change it up about once a month. Just have something surprising, do something a little unique. Keep people on their toes. Randomly assign, places to sit with handwritten placards with their name on it. Have pictures of your volunteers from them serving the last week. Play a game. Have somebody else lead. Do the meeting backwards. Encourage one leader the entire time that you really respect. Have a celebration. Just do something to change it up and spice it up about once a month. Keep it a little bit interesting so that your volunteers are continually talking about it and seeing the value and why they're there. Number 7, the more you can make it like a small group, the better. Yeah, if you're gonna actually meet there for 10 to 30 minutes or somewhere in between every week, then actually make it worth being there. And one way you can do that is by, just like you would the rest of the church, build community. Just find a way to force some conversation or have your leaders get to know each other a little bit better, whether it's a team building game or they just talk about specific questions, or you have a prompt, or they sit and pray with one another. Just find a way for them to gel and mix together, make it a little bit more like a community group. For me, I remember one of my favorite volunteer meetings I ever got to go to was just a bi-weekly meeting, and every once in a while the leader would just say, all right, I know you're coming in from whatever your day was like, and just take a moment and have some quiet time and pray. And just doing things like that was a little bit of variety, but also if it made it just a little bit like a community group, a little bit of taking time to just pray, and actually helped me and added value to my life, because there were times during that season where I didn't have a lot of time to pray, or I'd realize I've gone a whole day and not prayed. So just taking a moment to just sit and be still and pray was super helpful. And there's so many different ways you can do that as a leader. Number 8 is celebrate your people. People like hearing their names called out. They like being celebrated. So just take note of what's going well the week before and then shout them out. They don't have to do anything remarkable, just shout it out. Just talk about the people. Be excited about your volunteers that are serving well. And what's celebrated is repeated. I'm just amazed that even as somebody who understands that principle, as a volunteer, somebody says, wow, this leader was doing a really good job keeping the rowdy 8th grade guys in check, and then afterwards, even though he was a little bit harsher on them, they were all up there praying together or something, and man, just what a great leader. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I want to be shouted out. I want to do that. And so the more you celebrate and the more you highlight your people, the more what you celebrate and highlight is going to be repeated. So just continually do that. Encourage them. Get people to memorize names, have them bring an innovative idea, just have them do excellence, and then celebrate it. Number 9 is a little bit like adding value. It's pretty similar, but like ongoingly train your volunteers. Danny Franks has an incredible video about it. You can check it out up there about ongoing training. And I'm not saying you have to do anything intense or crazy, but just give your volunteers something to think about or chew on or innovate or plan or just help them solve a problem. If they have kids that they don't know how to get them to have deeper conversations, then give them a couple tips. Actually model it, have somebody act it out, somebody be the kid and you show them how to give them a high five and build a connection, or show them how to operate a cool piece of equipment on the tech team, or just give them a bunch of icebreaker questions that could be useful in student ministry. Just come up with some way to train your volunteers. Maybe it's literally watching a TED Talk, maybe it's demonstrating it, maybe it's bringing in someone who's really good at it, at shaking hands and having them show you how to give a good firm handshake and just practice it, kind of make it fun and hands-on, but do something to add value and teach and grow your volunteers, because not every volunteer is perfectly trained for the job. Some people just crush it, but some people are a little shy and this is their first, second, fifth time and they just don't really know exactly what they're doing. Or maybe they've been doing it for 2 years and they are doing something that is very ineffective and they've just never been told how they could do it better. So just model it, show people how they can get better. Add value to your volunteers. And then number 10 is I've just seen it with so many different leaders, whether they're young leaders or it's their only time leading it, or they've been leading it for several years, or they've are the pro at the church and kids ministry or whatever the thing is. But it just seems like leaders, when they're leading their volunteers, they don't have a lot of confidence. They're just kind of there and put it together last minute and are like, oh, sorry guys, it's been a crazy day. Let's just, pray real quick and head on in there and do the best we can. And like, I just want to see a leader lead and take responsibility and own it and do something great and do it with excellence. You're the leader, you're the person organizing the volunteer meeting. And so make it worth attending. Have some confidence and passion. And the best ones I can think of were the people, they were fired up and they were there to do their job with excellence. And that rubbed off onto the people volunteering like me. And so just think about every one of those things that you do, not that you have to do them all or do them all the time, but each meeting you lead is building the reputation of your next meeting and the attendance that's going to be there. And so if your meeting is a subpar meeting, well, the volunteers are thinking, if I'm early to this next meeting, it's going to be just like that one. But if your meeting's really good and they realize they missed something and the other volunteers are talking about it, they might just be there a little bit early for the next meeting. So if you want your volunteers to show up to meetings, then give them something worth showing up to. And those are just a couple ideas. But it all really comes back to how can you plan ahead and how can you do something well. And so if you feel like you're operating with a microwave ministry mindset, or if you've never heard of a microwave ministry mindset and you think that might apply to you, check out this video from Gabe Norris and see 3 tips on how to combat the microwave ministry mindset.